Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Yamisha Sandor in Washington, where the president and Republican congressional leaders are hoping to jam through his legislative agenda by July 4th, despite divisions in their party and the threat of political backlash. All day, the Senate has been engaged in what's called a vote-a-rama, as it considers changes to the legislation as part of a marathon session that could go late into the night before a final vote on the bill. And here's a reminder of what's in this massive package right now. It increases funding for immigration enforcement and the Pentagon while extending the 2017 tax cuts and temporarily ends taxes on tips and overtime pay. The bill is paid for in part by cutting funds for clean energy, food assistance, and the big one, Medicaid. The differences from the House-passed bill and many of the amendments that we've seen today are tied to how deep those Medicaid cuts could be. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office scored the Senate version over the weekend, and it says that that version of that bill would add more than $3 trillion to the national debt over the next decade, despite the president's promise not to slash benefits. The CBO also says the bill would cut Medicaid spending by more than $1 trillion and lead to nearly 12 million Americans losing their health insurance. Today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did not address those estimates, but she claimed the bill would preserve Medicaid for, quote, those who truly deserve it.
This bill protects Medicaid, as I laid out for you, for those who truly deserve this program, the needy, pregnant women, children, sick Americans who physically cannot work. This bill strengthens Medicaid. It will protect those benefits that hardworking Americans need, and that's why the president wants this bill to pass.
President Trump was scheduled to huddle with top congressional Republicans at the White House today as the vote-a-rama plays out on the Senate floor. The vote on the final bill is going to be close after North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis dramatically broke with his party, opposing the bill due to its cuts to Medicaid. He called the cuts a betrayal. Senator Tillis then also announced he won't be seeking re-election after President Trump lashed out at him for his opposition to the bill. Here's what Tillis said on the Senate floor in a fiery speech last night.
Health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any program. I'm telling the president that you have been misinformed. You supporting the Senate mark will hurt people who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid.
Tillis's retirement shows the potentially enormous political cost of this legislation to vulnerable Republicans who have to choose between an unpopular bill or backlash from the president. Still, most Republican senators are signaling that they're willing to get on board. Here's what Missouri Senator Josh Hawley told us about the bill's Medicaid provisions over the weekend before voting to greenlight debate on it anyway.
The Medicaid stuff in here, I think, is bad. I think we've delayed the worst of it. And in the short term, for my state, it's going to be fine. But on a going forward basis, we cannot go on like this. I think the party has a lot of thinking to do. And listen, Donald Trump ran on no changes to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and a lot of these folks have not listened to that. And I think that's a problem.
A reminder that, again, was before he voted to greenlight the bill, in case you got confused there. Joining me now with the latest from Capitol Hill is my colleague, Sahil Kapur. Also with us from the White House is NBC News' Kelly O'Donnell. So, Sahil, thanks so much for being here. Kelly, of course, thank you for being here. So, Sahil, you're on Capitol Hill. What's been happening with today's amendment votes, and have there really been any big surprises at all?
Nothing terribly surprising so far, Yamish. We're about 7 hours into this vote-a-rama. There have been a bunch of amendments that are getting voted on. What I'm watching for is two things. Firstly, how does the bill get changed? We haven't really gotten to that yet because we're still in a bunch of these motions and parliamentary inquiries. Democrats trying to send this bill back to committee. I'm also watching for how certain Republicans vote to try to pick up any clues in terms of where they are ultimately headed. We know that Rand Paul is a no. He doesn't like the fact that the bill adds massively to the national debt. We know Thom Tillis is a no for reasons that you just played over there. He hates the Medicaid cuts in this bill. I just spoke on the way over to this camera to Senator Susan Collins of Maine, the centrist Republican. She said she's still leaning against this bill on final passage, even though she voted to proceed on beginning debate. She doesn't like the Medicaid cuts. She doesn't like the fact that it extends lower tax rates on the highest earners, which she thinks need to go back up to Obama-era levels. That's not going to happen in this bill, so she's going to have to make a determination as to whether she can support it anyway. I found it interesting that Collins and Senator Lisa Murkowski, a fellow centrist Republican, voted in favor of one Democratic amendment to send this bill back to committee to fix provisions regarding rural hospitals. So is that a clue? We'll find out. There's also a trio of conservative senators, Rick Scott, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, who want further changes to the bill to decrease Medicaid payments to states, which could also turn into a significant issue for other senators. So there's a long way to go here before they call the final vote.
Well, as you talk about a long way to go, there's also this interesting thing, which is that even some of the Republicans who are going to vote yes and have said that they're going to vote yes are not enthusiastic about this bill. So I just wonder, do you think overall this is just a testament to just exactly how much power President Trump has over his party, that lawmakers who don't really like the bill are going to vote for it anyway?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, Yamiche. I think Josh Hawley was a perfect example of that. Showed how unenthusiastic he was about the Medicaid cuts. Said it would take health care away from working people. He has been shouting from the rooftops to anyone who will listen about how bad an idea it would be to cut Medicaid. But he nevertheless is supporting the bill. A number of Republicans fall into that same space. They would say it's not perfect, but it has too much of the president's agenda. It's too big to fail. They're not going to allow it to fail. Take a listen to what some Republican senators had to say.
President Trump's very important in the process because this is his campaign promise. It's the fulfillment of all the things that he told the American public that he would do. It's good. It's good for those people that he made that promise for. We're going to get it done.
He's leading this charge. Obviously, people know that, but he's been very effective, and he'll continue to work very hard on it all the way up until he signs it.
American people spoke loud and clear. They saw the Democrat policies over the last 4 years. They rejected them. Republicans now have an opportunity, I think, to fight for working families, and that's what this is about.
And remember, anything that passes the Senate has to get through the House through that narrow majority one more time. The question this all boils down to is, are there 4 Republicans in either chamber? Because that's the margin. 4 Republicans who are willing to say no to President Trump here and tank his agenda. I can't count to 4 yet.
Yeah, well, we're going to be counting very closely. Kelly, I want to come to you because another institution that's counting is the Congressional Budget Office. Of course, it is this nonpartisan entity, and it says that President Trump's agenda in this bill would cut $1 trillion in Medicaid spending and lead to nearly 12 million people losing their health insurance by 2030. But the White House is insisting that President Trump is not breaking his promise to not cut Medicaid. So how are they squaring the president's promise with these facts?
Well, one of the challenges today, the specific figures that you cited were raised in the White House press briefing, and Caroline Leavitt talked in the big broad strokes, but she didn't address those particular elements of it. She says that it is simply wrong that rural hospitals will be affected. She again cited the fact that she believes this will strengthen Medicaid. But the president himself has been clear that he did not want people who are using Medicaid as their means of getting health insurance to lose that. Certainly, you could add requirements for able-bodied, for work and things like that. But what this analysis is saying is that close to 12 million over a 10-year period would lose their health insurance. And then, of course, the skyrocketing cost of the bill, which is something that often is a part of giant legislation, that there is a huge cost to it. That, of course, concerns many conservatives. But on the human element of denying health care opportunities, especially to working poor, to people who broadly, not only are they the president's constituents, but many of them could have been his voters in some of these key states. When you're talking about Senator Tillis of North Carolina or Senator Hawley of Missouri, who represent some of those same voters and constituents who are concerned about the loss of this. The White House is not addressing this. They're saying that when it comes to Senator Tillis, that he is simply wrong. And it's hard to get to that math. And so they also acknowledge that there is still time, that there are still amendments, although they didn't suggest that there would be amendments that would undo those particular pieces. But the president was clear on a number of occasions that he did not want to see anyone lose those key entitlements, including Social Security, including Medicare. Here we're talking about Medicaid, a program where it's a joint state-federal program for health care. And so there isn't a good answer yet. Yeah. And certainly when we see the president next in whatever increment when he is on camera again, that certainly would be a top question to ask him about. And he's certainly engaged in trying to get this passed. The White House was very stark, very black and white about this has to pass, and the president is working hard to see that it does.
And Kelly, you're talking about the president being engaged. What do we know about the president's meeting with congressional leaders? There was supposed to be a meeting today. What do we know about specifically what he's doing to make sure that this bill gets over the finish line and maybe even makes that July 4th deadline that he's imposed on lawmakers?
Well, again, I hate to be squishy in my responses to you, but we were just asking about that a short time ago where I popped into officials to see what's the timing of the leadership from Congress coming to visit. Was not given any answer on that. Certainly the president can reach them by phone or video conference a number of ways, but we didn't get any clarity that there is actually a meeting that would be happening here. And obviously the senior leadership is actively at work on Capitol Hill. So that doesn't mean the president's not engaged, but in terms of an actual meeting, we don't have any update on that, even though we were told to expect that there would be one. Again, the president can work the phones. He can talk to and try and twist some arms, if you will. That's been going on for generations in Washington. But the president is certainly being clear, and so is his press spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, in saying they expect this to pass. And they've ramped up certainly the pressure when you see how the scenario with Tom Tillis of North Carolina played out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to both Sahil and Kelly for your reporting on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue there.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.